Hi, I'm Asterales Sedai of the Yellow Archer. Here is a recap for non-book readers of Season 1, Episode 5, Blood Calls Blood, of The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. If you're like me and can't get enough positive Wheel of Time content in your life, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Spoiler warning, I will be discussing characters and events up to Episode 5, but nothing that happens differently or later in the books. This is safe, as long as you've seen Episode 5. Let's go! We open to the aftermath of last week's episode. The fallen from both sides are being given their proper respects by the Aes Sedai group, and they are all given the same treatment in death, no matter which side they fought on. Almost every person who has fallen is from Logain's supporters, including the king, with one exception. The one exception is Karini, carried by her devastated warder Stepan. He removes her ring and takes out the stone. 1 month later, the Aes Sedai approach Tarvalon. Stepan is still in mourning, Karini's empty horse a constant reminder of the loss, and Logain also appears to have lost the will to live after his gentling and is staring blankly into nothing. Lan comments to Moraine that it's nice to be home, but Moraine says home for her is the saddle and wherever life takes her, as long as Lan is by her side. On another road, Rand and Mat are also making their way to Tarvalon. Mat is looking deathly pale and snaps at a child who gets in his way. Rand spots the giant mountain overshadowing the city and says he feels like he's seen it before. The city itself is bustling and crowded with animals and people selling goods, but the streets are super clean. We hear whistling again. Looks like a certain peddler is following Rand and Mat. Rand brings them to an inn rather than going straight to the White Tower. He's following Tom's advice of making sure Mat doesn't get too close to Aes Sedai. Mat is still haunted by the events at the farm, and Rand has to reassure him again that he was not the one who killed that family. In the tower, Moraine hides Nynaeve in the warder's quarters. Nynaeve is done with following and waiting, and demands to be taken to her friends. Moraine assures her that she has eyes and ears, in other words, her own personal spy network, watching all the entrances, and that she'll know if they've arrived. Nynaeve can see beyond her Aes Sedai speech trickery, and says, "But will you tell me?" Moraine changes the topic and doesn't answer her directly, but tells her to watch out for the other Aes Sedai, and not to talk to them lest she be caught up in the politics. As she leaves, she does say directly to Nynaeve, "When I've found your friends, I will bring you to them." Egwene and Perrin are with the Tinkers on yet another road leading to Tarvalon. Maybe Rand was right after all about how roads work. Unfortunately, there's an obstacle in their path. The White Cloaks have stopped the caravans to ask about the false dragon, and Mr. Birdman, who never forgets faces, has just spotted Egwene and Perrin as two very familiar faces and wants to take them in. The Tinker Elder refuses, and they form a human wall, linking arms. It's a touching show of bravery, but it's not effective, as the White Cloaks simply beat their way through and capture Egwene and Perrin. Back in the Tarvalon Inn, Rand has found a library and picks up a book called the Corathon Cycle. There's a picture of a serpent-like beast. Is this a book about the dragon? He's startled by another creature in the library and draws his sword. This creature seems amused, rather than annoyed at the reaction, and introduces himself as Loyal, son of Arrant, son of Hallan. He's an Ogier, not ogre, and says he's excited to meet an Aielman. He says the same thing about red hair, as Tom did in Episode 3, and even when Rand repeatedly denies being an Aielman, Loyal's adorable conclusion is that Rand is an Aielman from the Two Rivers who insists that he is not an Aielman. Rand frowns at another book, and Loyal is observant enough to note that he shouldn't be sad looking at the travels of Jane Farstrider, which is an adventure book. Rand explains that it was the favourite book of someone he was close to, and starts to tell Loyal of why he's here when he's interrupted by noise outside. Loyal starts to explain to him that it's the Aes Sedai, come back from the successful capture of Logain, the false dragon. Rand rushes off to see the procession before Loyal has a chance to either finish his explanation or pack up his things to join him. Mat is watching the procession from their balcony inn. Across the street, it looks like the peddler has found them too. The crowd spot Karini's empty horse and gasp in horror. An Aes Sedai died? This must be quite rare, and makes Mr. Birdman's collection of 7 rings even more disturbingly impressive. Logain is slumped in his cage, and ignores all the people throwing food at him. As he passes the inn where Rand and Mat are looking down, Logain looks up and starts laughing. Was Mat just imagining that though? He offers to make a deal with Rand. If one of them really can channel, they won't let the other become like Logain, and Rand agrees. Back in the White Tower, Stepan is preparing for a ceremony and is dressed in funeral whites. He tells Alana's waters and Lan how he came to meet Karini and how being her water was the greatest privilege of his life. Lan is moved by his testimony. He obviously feels the same way about Moraine. Alana's water is less sympathetic and lightens the mood, calling him out for his whining, but follows it up by saying that the White Tower is the only real family he's ever had. Lan gently suggests that bonding another Aes Sedai will lessen the pain, but Stepan snaps at him in disgust. Lose Moraine and then he'll understand. The ceremony itself involves Stepan returning Karini's ring to a circle of molten gold. It's a lovely symbol of rebirth and renewal and how nothing is ever truly lost. The gold a sister wears has been worn by past sisters and will be worn by future sisters. Back in Moraine's room, Lan approaches her, with neither daring to contemplate the unbearable loss they would experience should one of them die. It's an emotionally charged scene with no dialogue at all. In the White Cloak camp, Egwene is having her dignity literally stripped from her. She is scrubbed clean and her braid is brushed out, but it's done in a way that's a total violation and very uncomfortable to watch. It's a visual representation of how the White Cloaks can turn something good, like following the light and purity, into something extremely sinister. She is dressed in a pristine white gown and strapped to a chair that already has old, dried blood. Perrin is brought in and tied to a torture rack. Mr. Birdman, well, today he's eating pig, believes that there are no coincidences and that the light has guided him twice to these two. While he's willing to accept that Egwene is not an Aes Sedai like he initially thought, she's still a woman who can channel. He mocks the concept of Aes Sedai gestures and words, and that he had heard an Aes Sedai admit that they were just a crutch and not actually necessary for channeling, something that Logain demonstrated before he was gentled. As he cuts into Perrin, just like how he would cut into a pig, he tells Egwene the reason for his actions. To him, women who can channel are using a power meant only for the Creator, and he is here to take them out, one woman at a time. As Perrin screams in agony, we see his eyes change to gold. He leaves them with an ultimatum. Prove she can channel, and he will kill Egwene, and let Perrin go. Don't channel, and he will kill him, and let her go. Stepan comes to visit Nynaeve, and asks for some more tea to help with sleeping. He admits that just as he's about to fall asleep, the pain goes away. Nynaeve misunderstands at first, thinking it's a good thing, but he says that the pain is the only thing he has left of Karini, and that he's not ready to let that go. Quick to catch on, Nynaeve reassures him that the pain never goes away, and it's spoken sincerely from her own personal experience. Outside the rooms by the water statues, she is approached by Liandrin again. She's still trying to cozy up to Nynaeve, telling her to explore the library and gardens. She also explains a bit more about why she's of the Red Aja. Not that she hates men, but that men still abuse their power in the world, especially against little girls. Back in the inn, Loial comes with some good news for Rand, but in typical Loial fashion, introduces it with a seemingly random piece of trivia about Ogier being allowed in the White Tower grounds. He has found a woman with braided hair from the Two Rivers, and with clever deduction figured that this must be the same woman Rand was referring to. But it's not Egwene, it's Nynaeve, and they embrace in a warm reunion as Loial continues to explain away in the background. Thankfully, Rand is grateful to see Nynaeve, and doesn't point out that it's not quite the right person. Nynaeve realizes Mat is sick, but when she reaches to examine him, he lashes out and tells her not to touch him. He settles immediately, though, and apologizes. Outside the room, Rand explains to Nynaeve that Mat can possibly channel. She takes a moment to praise Rand for bringing him safely to Tarvalon, and agrees that they don't need the Aes Sedai to help. Two Rivers folk will stick together and figure things out themselves. She tells Rand of when Egwene had a serious infection as a child, breakbone fever. While everyone, including the wisdom at the time, had given up on her, Egwene herself never gave up. She fought all night and survived what killed most other children. She's unbreakable. Back in the White Cloak tent, Egwene is straining with all her might trying to channel. Perrin breaks down as he finally confesses to Egwene the truth of what happened that winter night and why he deserves to die. Egwene is shocked, but it doesn't change how she feels, and she reiterates to Perrin that it was an accident and not his fault. Perrin screams again as he is cut, and wolves howl in response. Remembering Moraine's teachings, Egwene stops straining and instead clears her mind to drift in calmness. She sees the tendrils of the One Power forming a fireball in her right hand, which she flicks towards the White Cloak. It fizzles out in a little puff, and he scoffs. Turns out, though, that was just a distraction, and her real strategy was to burn the ropes off Perrin and herself. Perrin growls as he is released, and we finally see the White Cloak afraid. He is in fear at Perrin's golden eyes. This is something he's never seen before. Stunned, he drops his knife, and Egwene doesn't waste any time picking it up and plunging it into his shoulder. Perrin grabs his belongings, and she retrieves the cluster of Aes Sedai rings, exiting the tent to a scene of chaos. Wolves are attacking the entire White Cloak camp. One wolf stops to bark and growl at Perrin and Egwene, but Perrin assures Egwene that he won't hurt them, and they make their escape. It's night in Tarvalon, and Liandrin approaches Moraine in the corridors to discuss Nynaeve and maybe hint at their past. Someone of her strength would be highly valued in any Aja, and that given her first demonstration of channeling was to heal, the Yellows would certainly want her. Liandrin is confident she can persuade her to the Red, but Moraine tells her it's a lost cause. In Steppen's rooms, we see him presenting burnt offerings to ward off the Forsaken. The Forsaken were a select group of powerful female and male channelers from the previous age who swore to serve the Dark One. Steppen repeats a name we've heard before, Ishamael, Father of Lies. This is the same name the innkeeper Darkfriend mentioned in episode 3. Lan gives his word to stay with Steppen until morning. In Moraine's room, Alana is munching on a persimmon. Liandrin did say they were in season, as they worry about Steppen. Alana says the pain is so deep, it's like they swallow the death of an Aes Sedai. Moraine is clearly concerned about Lan, and mentions that she read about a way to release the bond. Alana tells her not to think about such morbid thoughts as her own death, and instead worry about the here and now, where both the Amelin Seat and Liandrin both appear to be making power moves. When Alana leaves, she opens a gilded doorframe above the fireplace. Inside is a portrait of a woman with her back turned. Is there significance to this painting? As Steppen pours some tea for Lan, he muses over what would happen should he become another of Alana's warders. He's never been with a man, but he supposes he will have to learn. Lan corrects him. It would be 2 men. Steppen asks Lan about the wisdom. He saw how her first use of the One Power was to save Lan's life. Lan's not interested at all and shuts down the conversation, saying it would be a bad idea for her. He continues to sip on his tea as Steppen watches. As dawn breaks, Lan awakes from a drugged sleep. He finds the herbs on the table and then turns to see a dagger missing from above the fireplace. He races out, but he is too late. Steppen has taken his life at the feet of the fallen warders. He failed in his mission to keep his Aes Sedai safe, and Lan failed at keeping his promise to stay with Steppen until the morning. What follows next is a heart-wrenching depiction of grief and loss, but in particular of veteran survivor guilt. At Steppen's funeral, Lan is commanded to relieve all the mourners present of their grief. He places his hand on Steppen's chest and kneels beside him as some of the mourners in the room start to pound their right hands to their left chest in rhythm. The left chest is the physical location of the human heart. Lan locks eyes with Moraine. She is feeling everything he is, and the bond between them is feeding back and amplifying both. He screams and tears at his clothing, and we fade to black. Thanks for watching. If you liked my spoiler-free summary of this episode, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for future updates. And remember, yellows make the world a better place.